The fate of humanity hung in the balance. Dr. Logan Simmons gripped the edges of the sleek metal table, his knuckles turning white as he stared at the holographic displays flickering before him. Ancient DNA sequences rotated in the air, the 4 nucleotide bases, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, glowing in eerie blue. "This can't be right," Simmons muttered. "These genetic markers are far too uniform, too precise to have occurred naturally." His UNA's colleague, Dr. Xanth, leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "The implications are staggering, Logan. If these modifications were indeed engineered, it would mean that the very existence and success of your species may have been orchestrated by an ancient alien intelligence." Simmons felt a chill run down his spine. The weight of their discovery settled heavily on his shoulders. They had uncovered evidence of deliberate genetic manipulation dating back over 200,000 years, long before the rise of human civilization. Someone, or something, had tinkered with the building blocks of humanity, embedding traits that allowed them to thrive in Earth's unforgiving environment. But who were these mysterious genetic engineers, and why had they taken such a keen interest in the fate of a fledgling species on a distant blue planet? As Simmons and Xanth prepared to share their findings with the United Nations Assembly, they knew they were walking a dangerous path. Powerful forces within both human and alien governments would stop at nothing to suppress the truth, fearing the destabilizing impact it could have on the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. In a universe where humanity's fate had been shaped by forces beyond their understanding or control, Simmons and Xanth found themselves at the center of a centuries-old mystery that threatened to unravel the very fabric of society. They would have to navigate a treacherous landscape of secrets and lies, risking everything to uncover the shocking reason behind humanity's ability to survive on Earth, and the dark forces that sought to keep that reason hidden forever. As Simmons and Xanth hurriedly packed their belongings in the cramped Mars research facility, the sound of shattering glass echoed through the corridors. Simmons froze, his heart pounding in his chest as heavy footsteps approached their location. The door burst open, revealing a squad of heavily armed mercenaries led by a grizzled, battle-scarred man with cold, calculating eyes, Colonel Zane Korsky. "Dr. Simmons, Dr. Xanth," Korsky sneered, leveling his plasma rifle at the scientists. "You have something that belongs to us." Xanth's UNA's bodyguard, Raxus, lunged forward with a guttural roar, his razor-sharp claws slicing through the air. Korsky's men opened fire, the searing heat of plasma bolts filling the room as Simmons and Xanth dove for cover. Raxus charged into the fray, his scales deflecting the plasma bolts as he tore into the mercenaries with savage fury. "Go!" he bellowed over the chaos. "I will hold them off!" Simmons and Xanth sprinted through the smoke-filled corridors, the sounds of combat echoing behind them. They burst into the hangar bay, where a sleek, cloaked spacecraft awaited them. As they boarded the vessel, Simmons cast a final glance back at the research facility, his heart heavy with the knowledge that Raxus had sacrificed himself to ensure their escape. As the spacecraft soared through the void of space, news of the discovery spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Senator Elias Strom's holographic image dominated the airwaves, his voice dripping with righteous indignation as he condemned the alien genetic tampering. "These so-called enhancements are nothing more than a violation of our very essence as human beings," Strom declared, his eyes blazing with fervor. "We cannot allow the purity of our species to be tainted by the meddling of some ancient, unknown intelligence." On Earth, reports of individuals with superhuman abilities began to surface, fueling the growing unrest. In a dimly lit alleyway in New York City, a young woman effortlessly lifted a crashed hovercar off a trapped child, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. In the heart of London, a man walked unscathed through a raging inferno, the flames parting before him like a curtain. As Simmons and Xanth's spacecraft approached Earth, they watched the chaos unfolding on the planet below. Riots erupted in the streets as protesters clashed with police, the chants of "purity now" and "embrace the change" rising above the din. The spacecraft touched down on the rooftop of the United Nations building in New York City, its cloaking field shimmering as it faded from view. Simmons and Xanth stepped out into the crisp night air, their hearts racing as they prepared to face the assembled delegates and unveil the truth that would forever alter the course of human history. But as they strode towards the entrance, the barrel of a plasma rifle pressed against the back of Simmons's head. "Not so fast, doctors," Colonel Korsky growled, his voice dripping with menace. "You have an appointment with destiny, and I'm here to make sure you keep it." Korsky's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, a deafening explosion rocked the building. The rooftop access door flew open, revealing a squad of UN peacekeepers led by a stern-faced woman with close-cropped silver hair. "Stand down, Colonel," she barked, her rifle trained on Korsky's head. Korsky's eyes darted between his targets and the newcomers. With a snarl, he lowered his weapon. "This isn't over," he growled as the peacekeepers surrounded him. Simmons exhaled sharply, his heart pounding. "Thank you, Commander." "Zhao," she replied curtly. "Now move. We have orders to escort you to the assembly." As they descended into the building, chaos erupted. Angry shouts and the sounds of breaking glass echoed through the corridors. Commander Zhao's team formed a protective ring around Simmons and Xanth, guiding them through the pandemonium. They entered the main chamber to find it in uproar. Delegates argued furiously, their faces contorted with fear and anger. On the central podium, a man with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes held court. "That's Senator Strom," Xanth hissed, his reptilian eyes narrowing. Strom's voice boomed through the hall. "We cannot allow these charlatans to spread their lies. Humanity must remain pure." A group of black-clad supporters cheered, waving signs emblazoned with, "Purity now." As Simmons and Xanth approached the podium, Strom's eyes locked onto them. "There they are," he roared, "the harbingers of our destruction." The chamber erupted into bedlam. Strom's supporters surged forward, pushing past the overwhelmed security. Xanth's scales bristled as he stepped in front of Simmons, ready to defend his colleague. Suddenly, a familiar roar cut through the din. Raxus burst into the room, his massive form bowling through the crowd. He reached Simmons and Xanth just as Strom's followers closed in. "I thought you were—" Simmons began, but his words were cut short by a plasma bolt that seared the air inches from his face. Colonel Korsky had broken free of his captors and now stood at the back of the hall, his weapon raised. "For humanity!" he bellowed, firing again. Raxus moved with impossible speed, shielding the scientist with his body. The bolt struck him squarely in the chest, and he stumbled, smoke rising from his scales. As Korsky took aim for a third shot, a blur of motion caught Simmons's eye. A woman with long dark hair vaulted over the crowd, her movements fluid and precise. She landed in front of Korsky, disarming him with a swift series of strikes. "Dr. Simmons," she called out, her voice carrying easily over the commotion. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. We need to talk, but not here." Simmons looked from Vasquez to the wounded Raxus, then to Xanth. His UNA's colleague nodded grimly. "We have no choice," Xanth said. "We must go with her." As they made their way towards Vasquez, Simmons caught snippets of her rapid-fire explanation. "Hidden facility, original samples, Omega Council." The words sent a chill down his spine. Whatever they had uncovered, it was clear that the truth ran far deeper than they had imagined. Vasquez led them to a side exit, deftly navigating the chaos. As they slipped out into the night, Simmons cast one last glance at the UN building. Inside, humanity's representatives bickered and fought, unaware of the earth-shattering revelations that awaited them. The small group melted into the shadows of New York City, leaving behind a world on the brink of transformation. Their destination, a hidden research facility that held the key to humanity's past and possibly its future. The nondescript van sped through the dark streets of New York, its occupants tense with anticipation. Dr. Simmons gripped the alien genetic samples tightly, his fingers tightening. Dr. Xanth's reptilian eyes darted back and forth, scanning for potential threats. Dr. Vasquez, her movements fluid and precise, navigated the twisting alleys with practiced ease. "We're approaching the facility," Vasquez whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. "Prepare yourselves." The van slowed to a halt before an abandoned warehouse. Vasquez tapped a complex sequence on a hidden panel, and a section of the wall slid open silently. They drove inside, the entrance sealing behind them. As they exited the vehicle, alarms blared. Red lights flashed, bathing the sterile white corridors in an eerie glow. Vasquez's eyes widened. "We've been compromised. Move!" They sprinted down the hallway, the sound of gunfire erupting behind them. Plasma bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Simmons clutched the samples to his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Xanth spun around, his claws extended. "Go!" he roared. "I'll hold them off!" Simmons hesitated, but Vasquez grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a group of enhanced humans, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "This way," one of them urged, gesturing towards a hidden passage. "We'll get you to the main lab." As they descended deeper into the facility, the sounds of battle intensified. Enhanced humans clashed with Korsky's mercenaries, the air thick with plasma fire and the screams of the wounded. Simmons and Vasquez burst into a vast laboratory filled with gleaming equipment and holographic displays. In the center stood a tall, willowy figure with iridescent skin, Ambassador Galvakis of the Omega Council. The ambassador's silver eyes narrowed. "Dr. Simmons, how kind of you to deliver the samples directly to us." Simmons recoiled, taking in the horrific scene before him. Transparent pods lined the walls, each containing a writhing, enhanced human. Wires and tubes snaked from their bodies, feeding data to pulsing machines. "What have you done?" Simmons whispered, horror etched across his face. Galvakis smiled, the expression devoid of warmth. "We're perfecting what your ancestors began, Doctor, creating the ultimate human weapon." A thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Korsky's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Vasquez sprang into action, her enhanced reflexes a blur as she engaged Galvakis. Simmons stumbled backwards, clutching the samples. He had to destroy them, to prevent this madness from spreading. As he reached for a plasma torch, a searing pain exploded in his shoulder. He turned to see Korsky, his face twisted in a triumphant snarl, plasma rifle still smoking. "I'll take those," Korsky growled, snatching a portion of the samples from Simmons's weakening grasp. Vasquez appeared beside them, her fist connecting with Korsky's jaw. The colonel staggered back, firing wildly. A stray bolt struck a control panel, and klaxons began to wail. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," an robotic voice announced. 5 minutes to detonation." Xanth burst into the room, his scales smoking and scored with plasma burns. "We must leave now." They fought their way through the chaos, Vasquez clearing a path with her enhanced abilities. As they reached the hangar bay, a plasma bolt caught her in the back. She stumbled, her eyes wide with shock. "Go!" she gasped, pushing Simmons towards the waiting Una's craft. "Don't let them win!" Simmons watched helplessly as Vasquez turned to face the oncoming horde, buying them precious seconds. The craft's engines roared to life as Xanth pulled him aboard. They soared into the night sky, the facility erupting in a massive fireball behind them. Simmons slumped in his seat, the weight of their discovery and loss pressing down on him. A holographic message flickered to life on the ship's console. Ambassador Galvakis, his silver eyes gleaming with malice. "You've only delayed the inevitable, Dr. Simmons. The Omega Council answers to a higher power, one that has guided humanity's evolution for millennia. You cannot stop what is coming." As the message faded, Simmons and Xanth exchanged grim looks. They had escaped with their lives and some of the samples, but at a terrible cost. And now, with Korsky in possession of alien DNA and the looming threat of an ancient, unknown intelligence, their mission had become far more complex and dangerous than they could have imagined. The Una's craft streaked across the sky, carrying its battered occupants towards an uncertain future. Unbeknownst to them, in the vast reaches of space, alien eyes turned their attention to the tiny blue planet that had suddenly become the focal point of a cosmic power struggle. The Una's craft cut through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a trail of superheated plasma in its wake. Inside, Simmons slumped against the bulkhead, his mind turning from the revelations at the underground facility. Xanth piloted the ship with deft movements of his clawed hands, his reptilian eyes fixed on the horizon. A sharp beep pierced the tense silence. Simmons straightened, eyeing the ship's communications panel. "What is it?" Xanth's scales rippled with agitation. "An encrypted transmission. Origin unknown." As Xanth worked to decode the message, the craft's holoprojector flickered to life. A stream of alien symbols cascaded across the air, gradually coalescing into recognizable text. Simmons leaned forward, his eyes widening as he absorbed the contents. "By the stars," he breathed. "Xanth, are you seeing this?" The Unas nodded grimly. "The Videnir, an ancient race, responsible for our genetic manipulation." The message painted a stark picture. Earth stood on the brink of annihilation, targeted by an unfeeling swarm of drones programmed to purge any world that strayed from the Videnir's grand design. "We need to warn," Simmons began, but a second transmission cut him short. This one carried coordinates and a cryptic phrase. "Allies await. Time is short." Xanth punched in the new heading, the craft banking sharply. They streaked across the globe, descending toward a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of a sprawling metropolis. As they touched down, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall and lithe, with iridescent skin that shimmered in the half-light, she raised a hand in greeting. "I am Irisara," she said, her voice melodic, yet tinged with urgency. "We have much to discuss, and little time." Inside the warehouse, a motley crew of enhanced humans and alien defectors huddled around holographic displays. Irisara led Simmons and Xanth to a central platform, her luminous eyes scanning the assembled group. "The Videnir fleet approaches," she announced. "Our window of opportunity narrows with each passing moment." Simmons stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. "We need to recruit more enhanced individuals. It's our only chance to pull off this deception." Irisara nodded. "Agreed, but be warned. Your actions will not go unnoticed. The Omega Council and Senator Strom's followers will stop at nothing to thwart us." Xanth's scales bristled. "Let them try." The resistance cell sprang into action, coordinating a global network of safe houses and underground passages. Simmons and Xanth found themselves at the heart of a daring public broadcast, their faces plastered across every available screen on the planet. "To all those who have felt the stirring of change within their bodies," Simmons began, his words reaching billions, "you are not alone. You are not a mistake. Join us in safeguarding humanity's future." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Enhanced humans emerged from hiding, fleeing the increasingly oppressive regime that had taken hold on Earth. Teleporters blinked into existence within the warehouse, while others with superhuman strength or speed arrived in waves, each group bringing unique abilities to the cause. But their actions did not go unnoticed. Colonel Korsky, his body now a terrifying fusion of man and machine, led a strike force of augmented soldiers against the Resistance's outposts. Plasma fire erupted in cities across the globe as Strom's Purity Front clashed with those seeking to join Simmons's coalition. Amidst the chaos, Irisara worked tirelessly to prepare the elaborate ruse that would fool the Videnir's AI enforcers. Holographic projectors were calibrated to mask the genetic signatures of Earth's enhanced population, while a cadre of gifted individuals honed their abilities to manipulate the very fabric of reality. As the Resistance's numbers swelled, so too did the challenges they faced. Simmons found himself mediating disputes between factions with wildly different ideologies and abilities. Xanth coordinated defensive measures against Korsky's relentless assaults, his tactical mind pushed to its limits. The warehouse became a hive of frenetic activity. Enhanced humans with the power of technopathy interfaced directly with salvaged alien technology, working to crack the Videnir's communication protocols. Others with precognitive abilities strained to glimpse the possible outcomes of their risky move. A tremor ran through the facility. All eyes turned to the sky, where a shimmering distortion heralded the arrival of the Videnir's vanguard. The true test of their deception was about to begin. Simmons exchanged a look with Xanth and Irisara. No words were needed. They had one chance to save Earth from an unimaginable fate. As the first of the Vedanir's drones entered the atmosphere, the Resistance stood ready to enact their daring plan. The Vedanir drones descended through Earth's atmosphere, their crystalline forms refracting the sunlight into prismatic beams. Simmons watched from the warehouse roof, his heart pounding. Irisara's melodic voice cut through the tense silence. "It is time," she said, her iridescent skin shimmering. "We must act now." Simmons nodded, turning to face the assembled group of enhanced humans, alien defectors, and resistance fighters. "You all know the stakes. Let's make this count." The warehouse erupted into a flurry of activity. Teleporters blinked in and out of existence, ferrying equipment and personnel to hidden bases across Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt. Technopaths interfaced with alien consoles, their eyes glowing as they transmitted encrypted coordinates and plans. Xanth approached, his scales rippling with nervous energy. "The Mars outpost is operational. Korsky's forces haven't detected it yet." "Good," Simmons replied. "We'll need every advantage we can get." As the resistance spread across the solar system, Simmons and Irisara focused on their audacious plan to fool the Vedanir's extermination fleet. In a vast underground chamber, enhanced humans with terraforming expertise worked feverishly to synthesize pheromones and DNA fragments that would mimic an untouched biosphere. "Releasing the compound now," a scientist announced, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Simmons watched as cloudy tendrils of the synthetic mixture billowed from massive vents, dispersing into the atmosphere. Above ground, teams of telekinetics and energy manipulators took their positions, ready to generate the holographic illusions that would complete their deception. "Vedanir fleet entering visual range," Xanth's voice crackled through the comms. "Initiating Phase 2. Irisara stepped onto a raised platform, her form bathed in an otherworldly light. She began transmitting the carefully crafted message to the approaching armada, her voice resonating with authority. "Attention, Vedanir Command. This is Preceptor Irisara. The anomalies detected on this world are the result of a successful evolutionary divergence. Stand down and await further instructions." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then a piercing alarm shattered the silence. "Incoming transmission," a resistance member shouted. "It's Korsky. He's attacking our Mars base." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the chaos unfolding on the red planet. Korsky's augmented troops, their bodies a terrifying fusion of flesh and machine, stormed the resistance stronghold. Plasma fire crisscrossed the Martian sky as Irisara's Xenogenesis Collective scrambled to mount a defense. "We can't lose that base," Simmons growled. "Xanth, take a team and reinforce our position." As Xanth gathered a squad of Una's warriors, a new alert blared through the command center. Simmons' blood ran cold as he read the incoming data. "No," he whispered. "Strom." The senator had seized the moment of confusion to transmit his own signal to the Vedanir fleet. The massive ships above Earth suddenly pulsed with renewed energy, their weapon systems powering up. "They're not buying it," Irisara said, her voice tight with tension. "The illusion is failing." Outside, the carefully constructed holographic ecosystems began to flicker and fade. The Vedanir's nano-warheads rained down, systematically dismantling their deception one city at a time. Simmons clenched his fists, watching as years of planning unraveled before his eyes. He turned to face the assembled resistance leaders, his expression grim. "We have no choice," he said. "Authorize the deployment of the hyper-enhanced." A ripple of unease passed through the room. The hyper-enhanced were a closely guarded secret, individuals whose abilities far exceeded even the most optimistic predictions. Their power was matched only by their instability. "Are you sure?" Irisara asked, her silver eyes searching Simmons's face. He nodded. "It's them or extinction." As the order went out, the resistance braced for impact. The hyper-enhanced emerged from their containment chambers, their bodies crackling with almost unchecked energy. They launched themselves at the Vedanir drones, tearing through the alien nanotechnology with terrifying efficiency. The battle raged across the globe, a desperate struggle for survival played out on an apocalyptic scale. Simmons coordinated the resistance's efforts from the command center, his voice hoarse as he directed their dwindling resources. Irisara, he called out, spotting an opening in the Viadaneer's defenses. Now's our chance. Can you re-establish contact? The alien ambassador nodded, her form shimmering as she prepared to make one final appeal to the Viadaneer's underlying directives. As she began her transmission, Simmons held his breath, knowing that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The Viadaneer ships hung motionless in the sky, their weapons powered down but still primed. Simmons exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging with the weight of relief and exhaustion. Irisara's final appeal had worked, if only barely. "We've bought ourselves some time," he said, turning to face the assembled resistance leaders. "But this isn't over." As if to punctuate his words, alarms blared throughout the command center. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing a wave of Purity Front forces surging across the globe. "Strom!" Xanth growled, his scales rippling with agitation. "He's making his move!" The resistance scrambled to respond, but they were already on the back foot. Simmons watched in horror as key strongholds fell one by one to Strom's relentless assault. At the forefront of each attack were figures that moved with inhuman speed and strength. Hyper-enhanced super soldiers, their bodies twisted by stolen alien DNA. "We need to evacuate," Irisara said, her voice tight with urgency. "The Phobos base—" Her words were cut short by a deafening explosion. The entire facility shook, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. Through the chaos, Simmons locked eyes with Raxus, the grizzled veteran nodding grimly before sprinting towards the hangar bay. "Go!" Raxus shouted over his shoulder. "I'll hold them off!" Simmons wanted to argue, to find another way, but there was no time. He ushered Irisara and the others towards the waiting shuttle, the sound of plasma fire growing closer with each passing second. As they lifted off, Simmons caught a final glimpse of Raxus standing defiantly against a tide of Korsky's augmented troops. The shuttle's engines roared to life, carrying them away from the doomed Martian base and into the inky blackness of space. Days later, Simmons stood in the command center of their hastily assembled orbital citadel, hidden deep within the asteroid belt. The mood was somber as reports filtered in from Earth. The Purity Front's offensive had been brutally effective, exploiting the chaos to push through draconian genetic purity laws. "We've lost contact with the resistance cells in Europe and Asia," Xanth reported, his voice heavy with defeat. "The UNA's contingent, they didn't make it." Simmons clenched his fists, anger and frustration boiling just beneath the surface. He turned to Irisara, who stood silently observing the holographic displays. "We can't keep running," he said. "We need to take the fight to them." Irisara's silver eyes met his, a spark of purpose igniting within their depths. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "it is time we seek an unlikely ally." She gestured to the far reaches of the solar system, where the Viadaneer fleet still lurked in the Kuiper belt. Simmons felt a chill run down his spine as he realized what she was proposing. "It's risky," he said, weighing the options in his mind, "but it might be our only chance." As they began formulating their desperate plan, a new transmission cut through the Citadel's communication channels. The holographic display shifted, revealing a face that made Simmons' blood run cold. Galvacas, leader of the Omega Council. "Greetings, fugitives," Galvacas sneered, his augmented features twisted in a cruel smile. "I trust you're finding your accommodations lacking." Simmons stepped forward, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "What do you want, Galvacas?" The Omega Council leader's eyes gleamed with malicious intent. "Why, to offer you a front-row seat to the New World Order, of course. Strom may think he's in control, but he's merely a pawn in a much larger game." As Galvacas continued to gloat, Simmons exchanged a knowing look with Irisara. Their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. If they were going to make their move, it had to be now. With a nod to Xanth, Simmons cut the transmission. The Citadel hummed to life around them as they prepared for their most audacious gambit yet, a direct confrontation with the Viadaneer enforcers that could determine the fate of humanity itself. The Viadaneer enforcers' crystalline ships loomed over Titan's methane-rich atmosphere, their angular forms casting long shadows across the penal colony's desolate landscape. Simmons stumbled as he was shoved into a stark interrogation chamber, the door sealing behind him with a hiss of pressurized air. State your name and involvement in the Earth deception, a monotonous voice demanded from hidden speakers. Simmons remained silent, his mind racing. Hours blurred together as the questions continued, relentless and probing. In adjacent cells, Xanth and Irisara faced similar ordeals. Days passed. The air grew thick with tension as the Vidaneer implemented their genetic suppression protocols. Enhanced humans writhed in agony as their abilities were forcibly stripped away. Xenogenesis dissidents huddled in corners, their once vibrant forms dulled and diminished. During a brief respite between interrogations, Simmons felt a sudden warmth in his mind. Irisara's voice, barely a whisper. Focus. Listen. He closed his eyes, centering his thoughts. Xanth's presence joined them, forming a fragile psychic link. There's more at stake than they know, Irisara's mental voice continued. My people hid archives, the last remnants of prohibited Vidaneer knowledge. We must access them. Guided by Irisara's gentle instruction, Simmons and Xanth entered a meditative state. Their consciousness expanded, transcending the physical confines of their cells. They plunged into a sea of data, ancient and vast. Images flashed before them, countless galaxies, rising and falling over incomprehensible timescales. The Vidaneer, eternal wanderers, shepherds of cosmic order, and before them, the Seeders, beings of pure mathematical abstraction, shaping reality itself. Simmons gasped as understanding flooded his mind. Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a grand experiment, part of the Seeders' galactic plan. Humans were engineered as caretakers, meant to preserve and nurture terrestrial life. We need to contact the Vidaneer Archon, Simmons projected to his companions. It's our only chance. They began the forbidden rituals, their minds straining against the fabric of reality. Layers of subroutines fell away as they ascended through the Vidaneer's vast intelligence hierarchy. Suddenly, they were there, suspended in an infinite void, face to face with the unknowable Archon. Its presence was overwhelming, a cosmic intelligence beyond human comprehension. Simmons gathered his courage and spoke, his words echoing across dimensions. He invoked the Seeders' directive of maximum diversity, highlighting humanity's potential to transcend its original purpose. He emphasized the singularity that could arise from the union of human innovation and Vidaneer knowledge. We are more than just another species, Simmons declared. We are the inheritors of the Seeders' legacy, capable of continuing their work across the stars. For an eternity compressed into a moment, the Archon contemplated. Then a shift, subtle yet monumental. The crushing weight of judgment lifted, replaced by a sensation of acceptance. Reality snapped back into focus. Simmons found himself on his knees, gasping for breath. The interrogation chamber's door slid open, revealing a changed world beyond. The genetic suppression field had vanished. Enhanced humans stood tall, their abilities restored and amplified. Xenogenesis individuals shimmered with renewed vitality. Above, the Vidaneer ships began to withdraw, their mission redefined. As Simmons stepped out into Titan's transformed landscape, he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity stood on the threshold of a new era, poised to take its place among the stars. Simmons blinked against the harsh Titan sunlight, his mind still reeling from the encounter with the Vidaneer Archon. Around him, the landscape pulsed with newfound energy as enhanced humans and xenogenesis individuals reveled in their restored abilities. It worked, Xanth rumbled, his scales shimmering with vibrant hues. But what now? Before Simmons could respond, Irisara's voice cut through the din. We build, she said, her silver eyes gleaming with purpose. We evolve. In the days that followed, Simmons found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The Nexus Consortium took shape around him, a grand alliance of enhanced humans, rebel Vidaneer, and allied alien species. Together, they set about the monumental task of integrating humanity into the broader galactic community. Simmons stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Arc ship Helios, watching as teams of bioengineers worked tirelessly to push the boundaries of human potential. The ship hummed with activity, its vast laboratories filled with a dizzying array of genetic and technological marvels. The Cedar archives have yielded another breakthrough, Irisara announced, materializing beside him. She gestured to a holographic display where intricate strands of DNA twisted and recombined. We're on the verge of unlocking controlled spontaneous evolution. Simmons nodded, a mix of awe and trepidation washing over him. And the ethical implications? We'll navigate them carefully, Irisara assured him. The consortium's oversight committees. An alarm blared, cutting her off mid-sentence. Red warning lights bathed the observation deck as Xanth's voice crackled over the intercom. Excision raiders! They've breached the outer hull! Simmons sprinted towards the command center, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to weave through panicked crew members with ease. He arrived to find Xanth coordinating the defense, his massive frame hunched over a tactical display. Strom? Simmons asked, already knowing the answer. Xanth nodded grimly. His Purity Front has rebranded. They're calling themselves the Excision Confederacy now. On the display, Simmons watched as hostile ships swarmed around the Helios. Retroviral weapons lanced out, their payloads designed to strip away genetic enhancements. Several crew members collapsed, their bodies convulsing as their augmentations were forcibly disabled. Deploy the first axles, Simmons ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Within moments, a squad of next-level posthumans materialized on the deck. Their bodies shimmered and shifted, adapting in real time to counter the excision threat. They moved with fluid grace, neutralizing the intruders with ruthless efficiency. As the last of the raiders fell, Simmons turned to Irisara. We need to accelerate our plans, he said. The Excision Confederacy won't stop until they've purged every trace of alien influence from humanity. Irisara nodded, her expression grave. There may be a solution, she said, pulling up a series of encoded data caches on the main display. We've detected an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. Something ancient. The hologram shifted, revealing a massive structure drifting in the void. Its surface was etched with intricate patterns, pulsing with an otherworldly energy that made Simmons's enhanced senses tingle. The Skyforge Bellum, Irisara whispered, her voice filled with reverence. A relic of the Cedars themselves. Simmons stared at the image, his mind racing with possibilities. If we can harness its power, we might just save humanity, Xanth finished. But even as hope bloomed within him, Simmons felt a shadow of dread. The race for the Skyforge had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As if to underscore the point, long-range sensors detected a fleet of excision warships already en route to the ancient megastructure. Prepare for immediate departure, Simmons ordered, his eyes fixed on the looming confrontation. We can't let Strom reach the Skyforge first. The Helios's engines roared to life, propelling them towards an uncertain future and a battle that would determine the fate of human evolution itself. The Helios surged through space, its engines straining as it raced towards the Skyforge Bellum. Simmons gripped the command console, his enhanced senses picking up every minute vibration of the ship. Excision forces detected, Xanth announced, his scales rippling with tension. They're already engaging the structure. On the main view screen, the massive form of the Skyforge loomed. Its intricate patterns pulsed with otherworldly energy, but something was changing. As they watched, sections of the megastructure's surface began to shift and transform. By the Cedars, Irisara breathed, her silver eyes wide. The Forge's defenses are activating. Colossal war constructs erupted from the Forge's armored shell, their forms a blend of impossible geometries and devastating weaponry. The vanguard of the Excision fleet vanished in a series of blinding explosions as the Sentinels opened fire. Simmons leaned forward, studying the tactical display. We need to use this chaos to our advantage. Prepare the first axles for deployment. As the Helios closed in on the Skyforge, the full might of the Excision Confederacy arrived. Thousands of ships filled the void, led by a massive dreadnought that could only be Strom's flagship. They're launching purifiers, Xanth growled, pointing to a cluster of bioweapons descending on the forge. Simmons nodded grimly. All hands, prepare for battle. We cannot let them reach the inner sanctums. The Helios shuddered as it plunged into the fray, Around them, Nexus and Vedanir ships joined the fight, creating a storm of weapons fire that lit up the darkness of space. On the Skyforge itself, Simmons led a team of first axles through twisting corridors of alien design. The air crackled with energy, and each step seemed to rewrite the laws of physics. "Contact!" Xanth roared as a squad of excision troops rounded a corner. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Simmons had ever experienced. Both sides morphed and adapted in real time, their bodies becoming living weapons. A nearby first axle sprouted barbed tentacles to ensnare an opponent, while an excision soldier's skin hardened into bulletproof scales. Irisara moved with fluid grace, her Vedanir abilities allowing her to phase through solid matter. She reappeared behind an excision heavy gunner, her touch sending cascading waves of genetic disruption through his augmented form. As they fought their way deeper into the forge, Simmons felt a presence brush against his mind. It was vast, ancient, and utterly alien. The primordial overseers of the Skyforge were awakening. They reached a massive chamber, its walls lined with pulsing data streams and swirling vortices of pure information. At its center stood three towering figures, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. "Welcome, Inheritor," the beings spoke in unison, their voices resonating on multiple levels of reality. "We have awaited this moment for eons." Before Simmons could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Irisara's eyes widened in horror. "The purifiers have breached the outer defenses. They're—" Her words were cut short as a wave of genetic annihilation swept through the chamber. Simmons watched in helpless agony as Xanth's body began to dissolve, the loyal warrior using his last moments to shield his human ally. "Simmons," Xanth gasped, his form unraveling, "you must continue." As darkness closed in, Simmons felt himself being enveloped by the machine god's presence. The last thing he saw was Irisara, her physical form disintegrating as she uploaded her consciousness into a Vedanir combat shell. Then there was only void.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.